Speaker, this week the government lost 2 by-elections in one day, the first in 3 decades. It's no wonder that the Prime Minister has fled the country and left the honourable member to carry the can. The people of Wakefield and Tiverton held their own vote of no confidence. The Prime Minister isn't just losing the room, Mr Speaker, he's losing the country. But instead of showing some humility, he intends to limp on until the 2030s. So does he think the Cabinet will prop him up for this long?
Prime Minister.
I thank the Right Honourable Lady. I gently point out to her that we want this Prime Minister to go on a lot longer than she wants the leader of the Labour Party to go on.
Britain can't stomach this Prime Minister for another 8 years. His own backbenchers can't stomach him for another 8 minutes. And if they continue to prop him up, Mr Speaker, I doubt the voters will stomach him for even 8 seconds in the ballot box. Now let's imagine, Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister is still clinging on into the 2030s. Under this tax-high, low-growth Tory government, at this rate, by 2030, the British public will have endured 55 tax rises. Yep. So how many more tax rises will this government inflict on working families before he says enough is enough?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I think she was right first time. What about the Labour Party? We heard yesterday what their plan is. Their plan is no plan. The leader of the Labour Party said he's wiping the slate clean. He's starting from scratch. He's only been in the job 2 years. Sir Tony Blair, who's actually got some experience of winning elections, says there's a gaping hole in Labour's policy offer, and all the while there's a smile creeping over her face. All the while she's revelling in it. We're getting on with serving the people of this country. She's just playing political games.
Mr Speaker, he pretends to empathise with those struggling with the Tory cost of living crisis when it was he himself who once said that food bank users are not in poverty but simply have a cash flow problem. The honourable member doesn't. He spent over £1 million in 9 months on private jets. It shows how out of touch this government is, Mr Speaker. But at this rate, by 2030, 1 million more people will be using food banks. How many more working people will be pushed into poverty by his Prime Minister before he says enough is enough?
I tell you, if the Labour Party, if the Right Honourable Lady wants to help working people, they should be clear in standing up against these militant, reckless strikes by RMT. The Right Honourable Lady has flip-flopped. The Right Honourable Lady has flip-flopped all over the place when it came to these strikes. First she said they were lose-lose. Then she tweeted workers were left with no choice. When she was asked by the BBC, straight question, she's normally a straight-shooting politician, do you like the RMT? She said, I'm going to have to go now. I've got a train to catch. She talks about working people. She talks about working people. Where was the Right Honourable Lady when the comrades were on the picket line last Thursday? Where was she when the Labour front bench were joining them rather than standing up for the public? She was at the Glyndebourne Music Festival, sipping champagne, listening to opera. Champagne socialism is back in the Labour Party.
Well, Mr Speaker, that says a lot about the party opposite. I'll tell them a few things about militancy. It's this government that are acting in a militant way. And while they should have been at the negotiating table, they were at the banqueting table getting hundreds of thousands squeezed out of their donors instead of dealing with a crisis. And he talks about trains. No one can get trains because of his failed transport minister. And when they were asked about the absent Prime Minister's plans to stick around until 2030, one honourable member opposite said he'd lost the plot. Another one said anyone with half a brain would realise how dire things are. And the former Conservative leader said that the country would be better off under new leadership. And now the Prime Minister is at war with his own Defence Secretary after confirming he will break his manifesto pledge and increase in defence spending. Under this government, Britain is set to have less troops, less planes and less ships. The only thing the Prime Minister's interested in is defending his own job. Just how many more troops have to lose their jobs before he finally says enough is enough?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In fact, there's a £24 billion increase for armed forces. Spending on the armed forces is rising to 2.3% of GDP, again making us the largest military spender in Europe. And frankly, we'll take no lessons from the Right Honourable Lady when it comes to security of this country. First thing she did when she became an MP, 2016, voted against Trident, leaving us exposed. And she was campaigning for the Right Honourable Member for Islington North to be Prime Minister, someone who would take us out of NATO.
Mr. Speaker, talking about NATO, where was the Honourable Member when the situation in Afghanistan on a sun lounger? That's where the Honourable Member was. I take no lectures from the Honourable Member when it comes to doing your job. The Prime Minister said he felt no shame over the by-election defeats. He said his government have been quite exceptional. Well, I agree that they've been exceptional, all right. An exceptional record on stagnant wages, rising poverty and broken promises. And the Prime Minister wants to drag this out until 2030. And how much more can he stomach before he finds the guts, Mr. Speaker? How many more tax rises? How many more families drove into poverty? And how many manifesto pledges broken? I hope for the sake of the British public, Mr. Speaker, that we never find out. And when will the Deputy Prime Minister finally grow a backbone and tell the Prime Minister the game is up?
Mr. Speaker, I can't help thinking that Right Honourable Lady is auditioning for the leadership contest on that side, not really referring to anything on this side. She's got the support of the Honourable Member.